folks are just joining us, we're live at the scene of a commercial structure fire here on the 26,200 block of Hollywood Court in Valencia. This is just off of Cinema Drive between, I want to say, Bouquet Canyon Road and Valencia Boulevard, where a fire broke out inside one of the storage units, quickly spreading to at least 5 from what we last heard. You can see fire crews using their saws to try to get in right now. But I can tell you a very hectic situation as fire crews from across the Santa Clarita Valley, and we're hearing about some units possibly coming in from La Cañada Flint Ridge to help fight this fire. But I can tell you quite a few flames rising out of these storage units right now as they spread almost like dominoes, one by one by one. And we're seeing these crews coming in with their hose lines trying to get a handle on this fire right now. But as we pull out, you can see they're trying to get some of this debris out right now. You can see a lot of this heavy smoke rising out of these storage units, but firefighters are trying to just really get ahead of it right now. But right now they're working what they call an offensive mode. Now, offensive mode and defensive mode, those are the two modes that firefighters will typically work in. Offensive mode typically means they're going in to attack it, and they're going to try to attack it very quickly. But as you can see, this fire is spreading very rapidly through these storage units. And what we can see, at least about 10 storage units so far with smoke pouring out of it. But if you're in the Valencia area, you're going to see this heavy smoke billowing out toward the mall as the fire crews work to try to get some water and foam on these lines down here. But really simply, they're trying to make access into some of these units to try to cut some of these doors open to try to at least get some water introduced to this fire. You can hear the roar of the fire engines behind me. You can hear engine 124 just to my rear, as well as engines 126 and a multitude of engines from both Battalion 6 and Battalion 22. They even brought the Battalion 6 backup vehicle to help fight this fire, to help run command. But I can tell you, a very, very fluid situation right now as smoke continues to billow out of these storage units. They're fighting the fire from both sides of the building so far. But once again, this is a scene of a fire, a commercial structure fire at a storage facility on the 26,200 block of Hollywood Court. This is just off of Cinema Drive, if you're familiar with that area, just between Bouquet Canyon Road and Valencia Boulevard. I can tell you, fire crews working very quickly to try to get this fire out as quickly as possible, but I can tell you it's spreading at a very alarming rate through these units. As the sheriff's deputy said, when they first arrived, they saw at least fire coming out of 5 units. When fire crews arrived from Station 126, they reported seeing fire shooting out of the roof of this building. But I can tell you, most of these structures are typically wood-based for some of these older storage units, including this one here. As you can see, fire and smoke still pouring out of this building as they try to get a handle on what they have in front of them. But this fire breaking out at approximately, the 911 call was made to the fire department at approximately, I want to say 6:47 p.m. for the 26,200 block of Hollywood Court, once again in the Valencia area of Santa Clarita, just east of the Civic Center. But I can tell you, these fire crews have been pulling out debris, trying to make access to the fire. You can see with their helmets and their flashlights on, they're trying to see what they can see to pull out. But once again, you're looking at a live image of a firefight, a very intense firefight taking place here in the Valencia area at this storage facility on the 26,200 block of Hollywood Court. And the reason why we repeat the address is, I can tell you, quite a few people always ask, where is this fire? What are we looking at? And that's why we try to repeat it, not as much as we can, but as efficiently and as effectively as we can. I can tell you we're witnessing a very intense firefight as they try to work to swap out oxygen tanks at this point. I can tell you from where we're standing right now, we're not getting a lot of smoke being introduced to our area, but I can see firefighters making their way from engine 124 and making their way into the scene. You see that firefighter that just entered the frame of your screen from the bottom right side. We'll zoom in for just a tad. But you can see that smoke really making its way up. Making its way up and over the building as that heat's rising. A very intense heat out of these storage units. But once again, if you're in the Valencia area, you're going to be seeing the smoke billowing out for quite some time. But I can tell you, the smoke making its way toward our direction as the fire moves and progresses through the building. Fire crews are working to take out anything they can to remove any fuels that the fire may want to take. And it's part of their rehabbing and mop up and demolition. But you can see those flames coming off of those storage, that looks like filing cabinets. Those are actually filing cabinets that are on fire. Whatever was inside those filing cabinets burning and coming out. I can tell you that that's really a testament to what they're trying to deal with inside with some of these packed storage lockers. And I can tell you a lot of fuel inside. But those firefighters extinguishing that fire from that filing cabinet. But still, that smoke is going to continue to billow out for quite some time from what we're hearing. No word on if this has moved past the first alarm. No word on if this has moved to a second or third alarm. I can tell you our sources of information extraordinarily busy at this point in time as they're working to coordinate resources from multiple engine companies and truck companies. We were hearing about them possibly bringing a light force from Locking out of Flint Ridge to help fight this fire. And earlier they were talking about bringing in that light force for another call. But you can see this alleyway completely packed with debris, packed with smoldering rubble, packed with what was inside of these storage units. And most of these things really no longer salvageable at this point with significant fire and water damage. But you can see the chief from Battalion 6 working to examine the scene right now. You can see that's the battalion chief. That looks like Battalion Chief Chris Rash coming out of Station 126 to take command of the situation right now. A situation that has grown tremendously over the last half hour from about 5 storage units now to about 10. With this fire nearly doubling in size from the get-go, it moving very feverishly through some of these tightly packed storage units. And we're seeing units about 15 to 16 storage units down now showing smoke. And I can tell you with a fire this size and this involved, they're going to be here for quite some time working in the mop-up phase, quite simply more than 5 to 6 hours. Still no word on how this fire started, but they were looking into possibly this being human related. So they're working on investigating that at this point in time. That's what we're hearing here at the scene. But still, no confirmation for them. And we can see quite a few news helicopters now above us joining in on this coverage. But we're going to remain here on the ground to try and give you a first-hand look at what our firefighters are doing here But I can tell you the American Medical Response also staged here with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. The American Medical Response staging at least one, possibly two ambulances here. We saw them coming in as we came in, but they're here for firefighter safety and just in case they find any victims inside of these storage units, they're going to be here to help transport anyone who may be injured as a result of this fire. But this fire, we're going to try and get an incident timer. What that simply means is how long has this fire been going, and what we're seeing is this fire, that 911 call coming in at about 6:47 p.m. That makes this about nearly 40 minutes. But we have some good news to share. As you can see, a lot of that white smoke coming out. The fire has been knocked down. A total of 6 units were well involved, and an extensive overhaul is anticipated, but so far no injuries reported, but firefighters declaring knockdown. And what that simply means, the term knockdown is really firefighter jargon for we've knocked down or extinguished a bulk of the fire. We've extinguished a good chunk of that main head of the fire. The fire may not completely be out, but a good chunk of it has been taken out. And that's part of their offensive mode. And that's the mode that they're in right now, where they're going in and attacking the fire, as we kind of started talking about earlier, but quickly jumped off of. You have offensive mode and defensive mode. Firefighters taking, once again, an offensive mode, which means they're going in and starting what they call fire attack. And you can see firefighters backing out just a little bit to try to hose off from a distance using their main hose lines here, but also trying to introduce some foam. But back to offensive versus defensive modes. Defensive mode, which is not the stance they're taking right now. Defensive mode means they're trying to defend everything around it. It's too dangerous for them to go inside. They won't take an offensive mode. That's typically what you see with well-involved fires where the roof has been compromised. The building may be too unsafe for firefighters, but right now they're jumping in, taking that offensive mode once again and trying to go in and introduce water and foam to the fire. And the reason why we talk about that water and foam is incredibly important to firefighters for 2 reasons. One, most importantly, it changes the chemical properties of what's on fire and they're able to kind of knock down that fire very quickly. 2, it simply saves them on water. So in some cases when you don't have fire hydrants, you have a very fixed or limited supply of water. You're pulling water from these engines, you're pulling waters from maybe not necessarily a water tender on scene. What simply happens is you try to mix foam in to try to save you on the amount of water you're using. You're stretching your resources. But they have plenty of hydrants here at the scene of this fire, so that's not necessarily a problem, but they're going to introduce that foam anyway. And they're coming in with some ground ladders. From what we can see, we're going to pull out so we can show you these firefighters coming in with their ground ladders. And they're coming in and they're going to be climbing and basically taking a position on the wall here. And then they're going to be climbing onto the roof. We're going to try to make some adjustments to get the image brighter, but I can tell you this image is very dark because that's really how dark it is here. But we're going to pan back to the firefight on the other side. What they're going to be doing with this ladder, however, is they're going to be going up onto that roof and they're going to be venting the roof. They're going to be conducting their venting procedures and they're going to be allowing some of that trapped gas that's trapped in the ceiling to be released. And what happens with the venting procedure is you also keep that fire from moving horizontally. You keep it moving vertically. And why that's important is you introduce that oxygen source to the fire. It's going to want to stay there. You move up and down versus left and right. And what happens is you save those other storage units by doing that. And that's simply what they're going to be doing in just a second, is checking. You can see with that tool, that firefighter that's on the ladder right now, that tool he's carrying is what they're going to be using to check to make sure that roof is not compromised. What we're hearing is that these rooftops may also be metal sheets. We're still waiting on confirmation from that, but what we can hear at least is the firefighters walking on those metal sheets, and they're really doing somewhat of a tightrope type activity here. They're trying to stay where they can trust and where they have checked the integrity of this roof and what they call no cross-country traveling. And those firefighters up on the roof are going to basically use the way they came in as their source and their exit strategy for the way they're going out. But they're also using a tool on that roof to check for thermal imaging. That is a thermal imager that he's carrying right now. And what they're going to do on top of that roof is check for any hot spots. There may be some fire trapped beneath them, but they're also going to be checking for integrity, as I said earlier, to make sure that no firefighters go through that roof. And I can tell you the reason why we know a lot of this information is a lot of practice and a lot of attending some of their trainings and some of our off time and asking a lot of these questions in terms of what is it that you're doing, what is the procedure, what is the importance of the procedure you're doing, but also how can people stay safe. And a lot of the times they say check your smoke detectors, carbon monoxide alarms, practice your evacuation plans, but also a little bit of a shameless plug here. If you check the fire department's website at fire.lacounty.gov, you can find what's called the Ready, Set, Go plan. I believe the direct URL is fire.lacounty.gov/RSG, as in Robert Sam George, RSG. That stands for Ready, Set, Go. The fire department having that plan on their website where you can practice with your family on evacuation tips, things to pack, contact phone numbers if you have small children, that's really handy, medications, things like that. You can check online and download and print it out for your family and practice it with your children. But once again, we're back at the scene of this commercial structure fire here on the 26,200 block of Hollywood Court in Valencia. This is just off of Cinema Drive between Bouquet Canyon Road and Valencia Boulevard. This fire moving into now minute number 41. And as sheriff's deputies first arrived at the scene, they reported seeing at least 5 units involved. They were working on doing any possible evacuations, but also checking with the property manager on any plans of evacuation, and also ensuring that the gates remained open for fire personnel coming in. So you're really seeing multiple agencies coming together, from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Santa Clarita Valley Station, to the Los Angeles County Fire Department, Battalion 6 and 22, to the American Medical Response Ambulance Service, those EMTs, also all working together for a cohesive response. And I can tell you, they practice quite a bit. They practice quite a bit for these situations. But we're gonna move, actually, I wanna move to that roof again. But before I do that, we're gonna show you the number of firefighters who are here and really letting some of this smolder, but a bulk of that fire out, and they're working on a plan to try to take out more of the debris that's inside of these storage facilities. But you can see that smoke's still very dark, and a lot of that is from the smoldering. But you get some white smoke in there too, also as a result from the introduction of water. But you can see some of the char marks inside of some of these storage units. And you can see some of the firefighters making their way inside to see what was inside. But I can tell you, there will be an investigation into this and what might necessarily have to happen because of A, the amount of property damage, B, the amount of insurance claims that are going to have to be filed, and C, typical procedure, they're going to have to most likely call in arson investigators. And right now, that's their typical procedure for a situation like this. Doesn't necessarily imply that an arson took place, but it's simply they want to investigate and get a detailed look into how this started. Now that a bulk of the fire is out, they want to know how. How and why, what and where and when and who. So a lot of the same questions we ask for a typical news story, the fire department going to be asking as well. But you can see them examining some of the contents of some of these storage units here. We're going to pull out for a wider shot. As you can see, if you've been with us this entire time, that smoke dissipating. Not nearly the same amount of smoke pouring out of this unit, but quite simply the same color, the same texture, but not a lot of it at this point. Still more than enough to be concerned, but right now fire crews have declared knockdown on the bulk of that fire, and they're able to control it with the resources they have on hand. But what I want to show you is, I want to show you what's on the roof. We're going to move over to that rooftop for just a second. I was just communicating with our photographer, Corey Rubin, to kind of get a look at some of those firefighters on the ceiling, on the rooftop. And the reason why you can see their beams of light, those are the flashlights shining through the smoke. I can tell you we're completely covered in smoke at this point in time. So it's really interesting that we can see through the smoke, and especially that the camera can see through the smoke. Very impressive. But what we're hearing is one of their blowers starting up. What a blower is simply, it is a tool that they use to move some of that air out of the storage unit. So you're going to see as I pull out some of that smoke coming out toward the firefighters. And it's really an industrial sized fan that they use to try to draw some of that smoke out so they can get a clearer look as to what's going on and see what's smoldering inside. So they can get some hose line on that, as well as some foam. Just taking a break to relay some of the information here at the scene. So if you hear me taking those longer pauses, we're trying to get some updated information to figure out exactly where the investigation is and exactly where the firefight is. But I can tell you, we still know that Knockdown was declared a short time ago. No injuries reported at this time. But I can tell you a very extensive overhaul is going to have to take place here. They're going to have to empty out all of the impacted storage units to ensure that nothing else is burning, and to also ensure that this does not reignite. I can see some of you asking about that location again. This is the 26,200 block of Hollywood Court. Simply, this is off of Cinema Drive between Bouquet Canyon Road and Valencia Boulevard. There's a storage unit at the very end, a storage facility at the very end of Hollywood Court, and this is at the very end of that storage facility. So if you're seeing smoke in the Valencia area, there's no brush fire, there's a commercial structure fire that firefighters are still fighting. We do have a name for this location. This is Extra Storage on Hollywood Court. Thanks for the heads up from our photographer, Corey Rubin, for getting that information for me. You can see me struggling on finding a name here, but that name is the Extra Storage Facility on the 26,200 block of Hollywood Court. And firefighters still working with their saws to try to get some of this stuff cut up. And you can see some of those sparks being emitted at this point in time as we try to find our focus a little bit. And they're working on cutting some of the metal of these doors and trying to make an opening. But Battalion 6, we believe that's Chief Rash. That is Chief Rash. Chief Chris Rash from Battalion 6, headquartered at Fire Station 126, checking out the contents of that storage unit there. But really, you can see some of this debris. That's a testament to how hot this fire burned inside and what firefighters were dealing with. You can see that firefighter from Station 150 off of Quint 104. And the reason why I don't say Station 104 is quite simply Fire Station 104 does not exist anymore, and yet they're building Fire Station 104 at the corner of Golden Valley Road and Newhall Ranch Road, where Golden Valley makes that odd turn north and breaks off from Newhall Ranch Road. They're building that fire station there. And we're hearing some talk they may be shuffling around some resources into that area. But that kind of gives you some background of where these firefighters are coming from to fight this fire. As far as Fire Station 150, and the reason why I mentioned some of that, another important aspect is Santa Clarita has 2 quints. Something we were talking about earlier in the newsroom is that we have 2 quints. What its quint is It is quite simply a fire truck, but with an added component. Those are the really, really long fire trucks with the 100-foot aerial ladders that are able to really aid firefighters in getting onto the tall rooftops, but also introduce water at a very high altitude. And Quints 104 and 126, really at this time, headquartered at Battalion 22 and Battalion 6 headquarters at fire stations 150 and 126. So we have one on both sides of town, able to come together right now to help fight this fire. But as I said earlier, no word on if this has moved up in terms of alarms. We're gonna go talk to Chief Rash in just a little bit, but I can tell you he's very busy right now working this fire with his units. But really, this shows you how much of an overhaul these firefighters are going to have to deal with tonight. Quite simply, I could say this would go on for at least 5 to 6, maybe even 7 hours as they work to overhaul some of the drywall, especially the contents of these storage units. Still working on getting some of that updated information. But this is a good time to answer some questions if you have them about the procedure taking place in front of you. Feel free to ask us any questions you may have in the comment section in this Facebook Live. And we will do our best to answer them effectively and efficiently. And a lot of this is really just communicating. We're relaying the information from the officials to you, the viewers, and that's really our job. So if you want to take that time and be interactive with us, feel free. We'll do our best to answer them. So people were asking how many units are involved. So initially what we heard were 5, and then we heard 4, and then we heard 10. So that number fluctuating, but as you saw earlier, Chief Chris Rash, Battalion Chief Chris Rash, making his way through those units. He's going to be making that official assessment as to which units were involved, and quite simply some damage estimations. But very complicated considering you have to include the damage of the building itself, the structure. You have to include the damage of the contents. And simply, you can't really tell what the contents were after they've been burned, melted, charred, destroyed. So it's kind of a waiting game in terms of getting those damage estimations. So I know you've all been waiting patiently, but those numbers have been fluctuating over the last almost an hour now. This fire once again reported at about 6:47 p.m. and now it's about 7:39, so we're getting close to that 1 hour mark. But let's talk about some of the units dispatched to the scene and what that means. We can see Battalion 6, Engine 111, Engine 124, Engine 126, 156, 73, 76, Patrol 73, Patrol 76, Quint 104, Quint 126, Squad 111, and Safety Officer 10, and Battalion Chief 22. Now, before we get into that, actually, we have some new visuals here. You can see the Sheriff's Department meeting with one of the captains here on scene, and they're taking a look. And that's Chief Granados from Battalion 22. One of our newer battalion chiefs here in Santa Clarita walking with the sheriff's deputies through this area. And I can tell you, I see more of these people more often than my own family. So most times we know these people by name. They know us by first name. We know them by first name. But Chief Granados, once again, Battalion Chief 22, joining Battalion 6 Chief Chris Rash here at the scene. And we can see those sheriff's deputies here. And I can tell you what they're looking at are signs. They're looking for signs of arson. So we have 2 arson teams. We have some arson investigators from the fire department, but also arson investigators from the sheriff's department that are typically utilized for these scenarios. But they're going to be wondering how this started and whether it was human caused intentionally or accidentally, or it could be an electrical issue, it could be a wiring problem, it could be a multitude of reasons why this fire started. So some people may jump to arson very quickly, but right now no confirmation of any sort until the arson investigators can make that official determination. So this is going to be taking place quite a period of time. Are you guys making the run to So we're being asked to move back. At this point in time, they are making it a crime scene from what we heard from the sheriff's deputy here. So they're going to be asking us to move back. This entire area will now be sealed off and transitioned into a crime scene from what we've just been told. So we're making our way back. So bear with us for just a second.